This guy, basically reached out and says, "Look, I'm in the military, and I might be able to help prove the Earth is not a globe, not a sphere, could be flat, and he's got stuff to back it up." So it is my personal pleasure to introduce an active member of the United States Navy. His name is Robert. He is a NATO Sea Sparrow, and correct me as I'm doing this, NATO Sea Sparrow Surface Missile System Instructor. He's a master training specialist, and he's here, tonight to confirm three things, for this movement. One is, from everything he has observed during the last tour, there is nothing, absolutely no curvature to the Earth that he can determine. Two, there is no Coriolis effect taken into account with the ranged weapon systems he has been working with over the years. Three, the navigation systems currently being used by the United States Navy on the high seas, when you compare them to basic trigonometry, and he'll break it down for you, seem to be completely wrong. And there's many other points besides that, and wow, I'm just blown away that he is here. Robert, are you there with us?
I was in the same crowd as everybody else at one point, where I was kind of, the naysayer, like, let me go ahead and show them all these quote unquote proofs that I have that makes them crazy. And,
so you started as a debunker like everybody else.
Pretty much. I really, I came into it with a really bad attitude, basically going on, the lines of, I already know this, I know because someone told me.
On the seas, that there were certain things that were going on that didn't make sense to you. And I kind of wanted to go through them one by one. The first thing was you were mentioning to me about ships that you tracked in the distance. It's okay.
For anyone that doesn't know, max observable distance, roughly, for the horizon out to sea is about 15 to 18 nautical miles, depending upon humidity and dew point and all of that. I've actually been outside with binoculars, with high-powered telescopic devices. We have access to certain things like that. And as a ship is perceived to be dropping below the quote-unquote horizon, all you got to do is zoom in on it, and all of a sudden, poof, the bottom of the ship where it meets the water is back in observance again. And this doesn't add up, because at 15 nautical miles, there's several feet to be dropped around a curved Earth.
Yeah.
So it just doesn't add up at all. Our fire control radar, we actually use a 2-degree pencil beam. It's very, very tight beam, so there's very little room for deviation on that, and it's a direct line of sight radar.
Okay.
And we're able to track targets up to 50 nautical miles away, and on a curved Earth, that just doesn't add up.
Followed the Chicago skyline.
I have 60 miles away across Lake Michigan. Yep, they can see the whole city.
There you go. So this is collaborating that, which he's saying he can track targets at 50 miles away, which should be about 1,700 if you round up, 1,700 feet below the horizon. But you're hitting them just fine.
Wow. And we're tracking them just fine, and it just doesn't add up. You can do simple trigonometry on it with elevation angle, and everything works out, and you don't drop the track. You can track it quite a bit of a distance out.
We're talking about line of sight targeting or GPS for the projectile, for the missile.
For the missile, it's line of sight targeting. That's basically, like I said earlier, we track the target with a illuminator, and it's basically just another piece of gear that's tied into ours. And once we lock up on the target, we are line of sight pointing straight at it, because it's a 2-degree pencil beam. It has to be pointing straight at it, because if it's not going to see it. It's not a search radar. It's a fire control radar. If you're supposedly looking at something, 50 nautical miles away around a huge curve, it's just you can't punch through the ocean with RF.
But the point is that the 2-inch beam, you have to have it on there for most of the trip. That thing's
Not
out
most,
there.
all of it, pretty much.
Okay, all the trip, except for the last couple seconds, if that, you can pull it off if you had to.
If you absolutely had to, but you have to understand, if it's not close enough, if you pull it off, the missile will go ballistic on its last update, and it might not hit the target.
Got it. And so yeah, if and what you're basically saying is this 2-inch beam, which you're painting the target with, is you guys when you're firing this thing out there, you do not account for curvature. That beam shouldn't be able to reach a target at a certain at whatever the at 50 miles should not be able to hit that target.
Yeah, and this is a perfect thing, and I'm really glad that I was fortunate enough to work on this, because the argument always is, well, we can reach over a curve because we're a search radar and we use atmospherics and bounce off different parts of the atmosphere, and then it comes back down. Okay. Now, see, the problem with that is this can't happen with a 2-degree pencil beam. The angle of this cannot put RF up into an atmosphere and then bounce it back down and then expect to get it back so we can properly track.
It's too precise.
Yeah. It's too precise. It can't do that.
Yeah. Wow.
Last little topic that I wanted to mention about that specifically is some of our search radars boast distances of being able to track stuff like over 200 miles away. So take that into consideration for supposed curvature. This is something to think about. 200
miles, yeah. I haven't even looked at the thing at 200 miles, but that's a massive distance. That's I think that's a full-blown mile below the horizon if the world was actually round, if I'm not mistaken. Which, you shouldn't be able to hit it. Should not, unless again, what you're talking about, bouncing it off something, which what you're saying it does not do. Let me ask something else, because you and I hadn't really. And again, if you can't talk about that, that's fine. But yeah, you specialize in the Sea Sparrow surface missile system, but you probably have had exposure to all sorts of different weapon systems from the ship point of view, both short range and maybe even a few that are longer range. Do you guys compare notes? I mean, do you kind of see the same sort of thing where everything's consistent? It's not like one system is using curvature and the other system isn't. Nobody's using curvature on anything, as far as you know.
As far as I know, we do not. I'm glad you mentioned that, because other systems, if you want to compare them, the only thing we feed into our systems at all, and it's only on a plane system. We have this piece of equipment, and I'm sure quite a few people are familiar with this, but we use gyros, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And these gyros are powered on our ship, and basically they stay stationary once they're spooled up, and we have to power them up before we get underway.
Yeah.
And this information from this gyro is fed into all of our radar systems and all of our weapon systems, and all they account for is the pitch and roll of our ship. So we can account and send that information to, compensate. Like if our ship takes a huge roll, it compensates our weapon system to aim higher, if need be. And if you look at the coordinate system for that, there's no curvature in that at all. It's just a plain model.
That's great. Wow. So basically what he's saying there, folks, in case you've missed anything yet, is that there are no weapon systems currently in the U.S. Navy that are using curvature, or the Coriolis effect. It's something we've suspected for a little while now, but nobody's actually said it.
I was going to ask you, because you were talking about earlier about the optics that you have, from binoculars to, I guess, specialized equipment that only the military has. I was wondering, can you see at a greater distance at night than daytime? And the reason I ask you this is because basically our human eye only sees what's reflected or refracted off of objects, right? Can you basically see further at night, whether it's other ships or other objects?
I'll put it to you this way: on my tour on board that ship, I stood a few different watches. I can't go into detail with what they were. We electronically could see different ships that were like 20, 25, 30 nautical miles away. And I've been outside and I've seen with infrared cameras, where there's no haze, none of that stuff. I've literally seen ships 25, 27 nautical miles away.
Wow. And infrared, that's not something that's not mirage material there.
I looked out in that distance, I went outside and I could see it, and I was amazed. Not like in the essence of, all of a sudden I thought we were on a flat world because I didn't think that way at the time.
Yeah.
But I was amazed in the fact that we were always pounded in the head with, oh yeah, the horizon's only 15 to 18 nautical miles, over and over and over again. And that's what we were always force fed.
So it was
it's in our training.
Yeah. So it was this nagging thing in the back of your head going, wait, I can only see 15 to 18 nautical miles, but I'm seeing a ship at 27.
Yeah.
Yeah. Almost double. And I can see it. And I'm seeing it with infrared, which means it's actually there. It's not, mirages don't give off big heat signatures or yeah. Some little, you were mentioning kind of some inconsistencies with practical math versus how the ship actually gets from point A to point B.
Yes. One of the things that always struck a chord with me looking back on it is how long it actually took us to get to different parts of the world. Meaning, specifically, if the Earth was a globe, we should be able to take, a spherical trajectory to a destination, and that's anyone that knows anything about, math will know that the hypotenuse is always the shorter distance. And that spherical attribute to it, we should get to a said destination based upon how fast we're going, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And that should play into it. And that should be all that you have to take into consideration. Whenever you look at it, these distances sometimes take much shorter of a time, or sometimes they take a lot longer, depending upon where we're going in the world. There's nothing to account for that, because I can tell you, we know how fast our ship goes. And when we're at a steady cruise speed and nothing's changing it and we're not stopping for any reason other than to do boxes out at sea, we do a whole lot of boxes. And sometimes looking back on that, I always wondered why we did that. And a lot of it has to do with, I think, trying to mask how long it actually takes us to get to certain places.
Explain real quick. Sorry, I have to back up. The boxes. Explain that for the layman that's never heard that.
And this is something people can look up to. We basically, depending upon where our area of responsibility is, wherever in the world, we'll just kind of sit in an area and just do boxes out in the sea. Like, we'll just do circles, like over and over and over again.
Wow.
Okay. But you're saying that sometimes you suspect that sometimes when you guys are just going in circles, it's because you want to kind of mask the fact that the destination is going to be off.
Yes, I honestly, looking back on that, that's what I surmise. And, I'm not trying to get into the speculation side of it. I'm trying to bring forth truths.
Sure.
And that is my speculation, I'll be fair. But it makes perfect sense when you actually think about it, because when you look at it and compare it to other evidence like southern hemispherical travel by airplane, stuff like that, like you said, how they just fall off the face of the world pretty much.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
Yeah.
It adds up, if you look at it and you compare facts with facts, it makes perfect sense. There's not a whole lot of room to account for that, because when we're cruising and we got a mission to do, we're cruising, we're not lollygagging around, we're staying full speed.
Yeah.
And based upon the distance, and I've mapped it out before, the east coast of the United States over to the Mediterranean, and it should have took a certain amount of time, and it ended up taking, less time than that. And I'm like, how is that possible? Because we don't go faster than that.
And when you say less time, you mean by days or
by
hours?
Days?
By days.
By days.
What?
So you're supposed to be there on Friday and you show up on a Tuesday type of thing?
Well, not that crazy, but
bad.
but bad. It's quite a bit off. And, I've been on deployments before where, we have a max speed and we can't break that speed by limitation. We've gotten there earlier. And I'm like, I've made this trip before going across the pond, the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah.
And it took us 2 weeks.
Yeah.
As where I've went across it before and it took us a week and 5 days.
Whoa. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Then I think, people would be going, what happened? Is there something wrong with the engines? They'd be checking every piece of equipment in that thing. But that's amazing. Yeah, I don't even know what to make of that yet. Because there's especially with ships, there's a real limitation on speed. You know, it doesn't matter what you put into the engines. You could hook up nitros all you want. It's not going to help you. You were saying that when you're south of the equator, you ran into things that kind of fit in with the models that we've been discussing for the last 6-7 months, which is distances seem to be out of whack when you get well, on a globe it's south of the equator, but on a flat map it's out in the outer ring. Is that something can you elaborate on that?
It's something that actually makes perfect sense to me, because it actually took longer a lot of times to get to an area whenever we are tracking and, you know, making sure that we're on a proper course to get to a certain area, like Costa Rica or Guyana or Suriname or something like that. It took a lot longer to get there than what I thought it was going to, because they said, oh yeah, we go such and such fast. And I'm like, I've looked this up in retrospect, like how long it's actually plotted to be. And it should have taken like about 3 or 4 days less than what it actually took.
Oh, I got you.
Like, yeah.
So
it was much long.
Yeah, which is what we've been looking at.
But
Cool.
by the way, Mark, I'm terrible with that equation that everybody talks about.
Which one?
The
curvature?
For calculating the curvature of the Earth. I was trying to explain it to my son today.
It is 8 inches per mile squared. So and when you hear that, it sounds wrong. And Sean knows. I'm sorry, Robert knows this one. Crap. The where it is 8 inches times every mile. Every mile times itself. So at mile 2. It's 2 times 2, which is 4, times 8 inches, which is 32 inches. 3 times 3, 3 miles is 3 times 3 is 9 times 8 inches, which is 72 inches.
That's so the second mile? The second mile is...
Well, the first mile is nothing. It's just 8 inches.
Okay.
The second mile is 2 times 2 times 8. The third mile is 3 times 3 times 8. 4 times 4 times...